Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm excited as always to be here with you. Although you may notice a difference in my energy levels today. I'm trying a little experiment here. I'm doing a caffeine-free podcast here today, and I'm doing a whole caffeine-free day. I've noticed, and this is something that is involved with mindfulness that I'll refer to in a minute. But I've noticed myself, sort of. Say slipping into a certain habit of maybe overdoing the caffeine a little bit every day, and as I notice myself doing that, I'm trying to sort of lean into it and see, like, okay, what happens if I don't have caffeine for a whole day? What happens to my body, right? And this is really the essence of what we practice when we practice mindfulness and meditation, which there's really not a difference between the two. But when we say mindfulness, we're really talking about more of an informal practice of just being aware, right, moment by moment, whereas meditation is known as like a formal practice, right, where we close our eyes, sometimes cross our legs, and we do this particular practice, right? But there's really no difference between the two. It's just one is a formal version of the other, which is informal. Okay. And when we practice mindfulness, really what we're doing is we're practicing first and foremost non-judging awareness. And in my opinion, and the experience and the teaching that I do, I like to look at the opposite of judgment as curiosity. Right? When we judge something, we're saying what that thing is, right? But when we're curious about something, we're asking, what is this thing? Right, and that's what I mean by the little experiment I'm doing with the caffeine, right? Which is to say, I'm not saying it's not bad that I have caffeine every day, and it's not good that I don't have caffeine today. It's just a question of, let me see what happens if I, as I notice something, right, which I notice in my awareness, I notice that maybe you're overdoing it a little bit, Art. Maybe it's a little bit, you're finding yourself up later. You're finding yourself maybe a little tense throughout the day in a way that is not necessarily, certainly not natural, right? There's nothing that's making me tense. Pardon me. It's coming from the caffeine intake, right? And so the idea then is not to somehow, there's two things, right? Number one is that we don't need to now all of a sudden rip everything down and say, okay, that's it, caffeine never again, right? Because I don't know that any of us could sustain that kind of thing, and I don't know that we want to, right? But then the other thing is, again, it's about not saying, oh, this is bad, so therefore I have to do the opposite, which must be good, right? It's about saying, well, let me try to understand it a little more deeply, right? And this is really how we can show up to life. This is how we show up to moment by moment to our experience in this life, is by bringing this sense of curiosity into it, right? To say, to inquire, right? Like, if somebody seems upset, right? Instead of, and a lot of times what we try to do is and I say try, but it's really an unconscious effort that we're doing, where we're let's say somebody's upset with us, right? We're trying to determine, okay, I understand what they're upset with, and therefore I can fix it, right? And of course, this is just our brain doing what our brain does, right? Our brain is here to predict what is likely to happen next, and that's keeping us safe, right? So there's nothing wrong with that either, right? And so that's something else that we could bring awareness to. We could say, okay, why is it that I feel like I need to define this thing and assume that I understand everything, even though, as I like to tell people, I don't know what I don't know about this, right? And so when we can instead, and again, that's the thing about moment by moment experience and moment by moment awareness of our experience, is that we, notice moment by moment, where we're getting caught up in things. And a lot of times it's not like, oh, okay, I see this, I see that I'm judging this thing or whatever, and so now I just got to stop judging, and then that's it, and it's never going to come up again, and nothing's ever going to come out of this that's going to cause any kind of confusion or conflict or anything like that. It's much more like My clients and I always come to this visual of peeling an onion, right? That you peel one piece of skin, and there's right underneath it there's another piece of skin, right? Actually, the skin is the onion, though, right? So it's not like an orange, right, where I just peel the skin off the orange and then I got the fruit inside. The onion is the peel, right? And so there's a point where the outer peels, which are not really edible, give way to those inner peels, right? But there's no point at which it's like non-onion, if you will, right? And so this is where, when we can approach this work, especially this work, with this kind of curiosity, but also the commitment that it's going to be something that keeps arising before us, right? Like, even as I accept one thing, right, that I might have been feeling aversive towards, in the next second there could be another opportunity that I need to accept, right? And this is how life works. This is how life happens, moment by moment. And so it's really a very important, what I came on to talk about today is this sort of essence of, this yes or no essence that we tend to have in our lives, right? Which is ties into what I'm saying here, right? That we have this tendency to see things as either, it's here or it's not here. It's on or off. It's black or white. It's good or bad. It's comfortable or uncomfortable. It's right or wrong. Okay, I mean, I could go on and on and on, right? But the idea is that life does not really fit into categories like that. It just doesn't work that way. One of the latest metaphors I've the latest evolution of a metaphor of traffic, right? The way I've been presenting this lately. Imagine there's a snarling traffic jam, like nothing is moving, not a single car is moving even an inch, right? We've all been in that kind of situation, right? There's two cars that I want you to imagine. The one on the left is a guy who's in his car trying to get to the hospital where his wife is in labor, right? She went into labor sooner than they expected. He was at work, and now he's struggling to get over to the hospital so he can be there for the birth of his child, which he's been looking forward to for all this time. And he feels, he's probably got some stories going through his mind that if he doesn't get to the hospital, then there's going to be something wrong, that his child is going to grow up to be, miserable because he's not there to hold her as soon as she's away, and these are just stories that we tell ourselves, right? But what I wanted you to picture is that as this guy's sitting there in the traffic, he's probably squeezing the steering wheel. He might be even banging on the dashboard, cursing himself for not taking a different route, right? And so for this person, traffic is bad, right? It's bad, 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 bad. Nothing good about it, right? But now picture in the car right next to him, okay, there's a man, but this man is with his wife and his daughter, who's about 3 years old, right? And this man is an enlisted member of the armed service, on the armed forces, and he's in, let's say, the Army, right? And he's about to leave. He's driving with his wife and child to the airport so that he can get on a plane, and he's going to be gone for 2 years, right? Stationed overseas, right? And so in that moment, this man, right, who's now in this snarling traffic, he's saying to himself, oh my gosh, thank goodness I didn't take that other route, that I'd probably already be at the airport now and saying goodbye to my family. And this offers me, this horrible traffic offers me, an extra 30 minutes of sitting with my family. Maybe I'll even miss the flight and I'll have to hang out at the airport with them for a few hours. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So to this guy, traffic is good. There couldn't be anything better. This traffic jam is manna from heaven. So how could traffic itself be good or bad? Right? It can't be. It's just our perception of it. It's our experience of it. And whether we experience it from the judgment of, traffic equals bad, or we look at it with curiosity. We look at it and we say, I wonder what I could do right now. Now that I'm stuck in this traffic, because I'm not either one of these guys, right? My wife's not pregnant, and I'm not driving to the airport. I'm just a guy just kind of sitting in this traffic. Can I bring some curiosity to this? Can I even bring some gratitude to it? Is there something I can be grateful for this traffic jam? Is there a way that I can learn something about myself? And that is the point of today's podcast, right? Because in all of these instances, right, whether we happen to be the guy, whose wife is giving birth, or we're the guy who's driving to the airport, or we're the guy who is neither of these, right, or many other options, right? What we can do is we can see things not as yes or no, or good or bad, or right or wrong, right? Life does not happen that way, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, right? Now we could look at it on a biological level, right? Where there's nothing that's absolute in biology. Everything is on a spectrum. There's nothing, as Dan Siegel calls it, life is not digital, it is analogic. There's a great, flow, a great range between, what we consider good and what we consider bad, right? And it's, again, noticing why we believe something is good or bad, right? And that's where we can recognize that things are both good and bad, and therefore neither good nor bad, right? And so this is where I want to bring this to your attention, because, as we go through, especially as we start practicing mindfulness and we start learning these practices and building the skills, right, that it's very, very helpful to look at it as, even something like stress, right? Stress is not either stress or no stress, right? There's varying degrees of stress. Right? Sometimes stress is a positive experience, right? When I'm on a roller coaster or playing hockey every week, my body is going through stress just as it would if I'm sitting in a traffic jam worried about, missing an appointment or, the birth of my child or something, right? It's the same thing that's happening in my body. But one is happy, the other is terrifying, right? And so it's when we really pay attention to what we're experiencing moment by moment, we start to recognize this sort of spectral reality that we're experiencing, right? Which is to say that stress has a wide range to it. So do my emotions. So does every feeling in my body. So do my thoughts and my stories in my mind. Right? That there's no such thing as, again, it's not like I'm either in stress or I'm not in stress, right? It's varying degrees. It's I'm feeling tension, right? But what does this tension mean? Right? Or better yet, or another important question we can ask is, okay, what's the tension doing? Right? If I really pay attention to it, it's not just that I am tense and therefore I need to go try to be not tense anymore, right? But instead, noticing the tension and feeling into it and recognizing the movement of the tension even. Recognizing when, how the tension is rising or how it's dissipating. And then when we start to see this sort of, analogic reality to to life, right, we can start to really notice the nuances in things. And we can notice things that, again, like, wow, I'm feeling very tense because I'm telling myself this story that traffic is bad. Right? But if I take this moment and say, okay, I'm going to use this time that I'm stuck in traffic to do a meditation practice. No, I'm not going to close my eyes and, sit cross-legged because I'm still driving an automobile. But there's many ways in which I could, become aware of what it is that's going on. And this, again, allows me to start to notice that wow, I didn't realize I was feeling such tension before. But now I do realize that I feel it, at a much smaller level before it gets to the point where I'm blowing up and becoming very upset with things. Right. So the idea of seeing things in this more analogic and spectral sort of reality, allows us, then it opens us to the ability to now see the nuances of our own experience, which includes the nuances of stress, the nuances of love, the nuances of fear, the nuances of anything that we're doing. Anything and everything is very nuanced. Even something like hunger, right? Like, I'm hungry or not hungry. No, that's not really true. It's you might be feeling the slightest little tinge of hunger at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but by 5 o'clock you're starving. Well, there's a lot that happened in that time, in those 2 hours. And if we're paying attention to it, we can notice it and we can start to become more familiar with it. And really, this is how meditation itself is set up, right? Including mindfulness, like on the informal level of practice, right? Which is to say, meditation is never, ever, ever about locking into something. Nor is mindfulness. It's not about locking into some certain way that we feel, or some certain level of acceptance, or some certain level of letting go, or complete non-judgment, right? Anytime we're using those terms in our mind, we can tell ourselves, okay, I'm probably not on the right path here because that's not how things work. And this is where meditation helps us, because meditation allows for us, or I should say the very premise and foundation on which meditation is built is on the concept of returning. Right? It's never, ever, ever about, okay, stop your mind from wandering, or lock yourself in on this, object of your meditation and never allow your mind to wander from it. That's not, if anybody's teaching meditation that way, I would caution you that you should probably get a second opinion. Because that's not really how it works. Because again, that sort of rigid and binary or digital, sort of look belies everything in our experience. It just doesn't happen that way. Whereas conversely, as we recognize that in meditation, it's actually the benefit, the mind wandering is the benefit of meditation. I often describe it like this: like if you were to see somebody go into the gym, and I'm sure I've said this so please bear with me. I'm sure you've all heard this before. But if you were to be, let's say you're at the gym, and I don't go to the gym, so imagine that you're at the gym and somebody is standing there holding a barbell, right, or a little dumbbell, a little one-handed thing, right? And for all of you on the podcast, I'm just basically, doing like a bicep flex mode, right? Like like the arm and hammer, right? And so my arm is flexed right now. So imagine you have somebody standing there with a weight in their hands, and they just stand there like that, right? Most of the people in the gym would be like, oh, does he realize that that's not going to work? Does she know that that's not how this whole works? It's like that commercial. This is not how this works. This is not how any of this works, right? Of course we would, because we all instinctively know that is not how you work out. And if it was that easy, everybody would be in completely, perfect shape, right? We'd all be chiseled and beautiful specimens of humans, right? There wouldn't be any muscle, lack of muscle tone in anyone if it was that easy, right? Because anybody could just stand there for, 10 minutes a day, right? And so we know instinctively, and of course we can, confirm that instinctive understanding with scientific understanding, and we know that the way that we build this muscle of the bicep is not by just holding it in this flex, but it's by releasing and flexing again, releasing and flexing again. And so the same thing is true for your brain when you're doing meditation. If you just sit there and you have a meditation where no mind wandering happens at all, well, you didn't really, that's like going to the gym and sitting in the sauna, like, yeah, I'm sure you enjoyed it. It must feel good and stuff. But, you didn't build any muscles. You didn't, effectively cultivate anything that we're looking to cultivate when we go to the gym or we do the practice of meditation. And so what we come to realize as we perform this practice of meditation, we come to realize that, it is when my mind wanders and I recognize it's wandered, and then I return back to whatever the object of my meditation is. If you learn meditation from me, that object would most likely be the breath. That's where I start to build a skill. So it does me no good to just sit here and, I remember so many times I've had, people come to me, students and clients come to me and say, Art, the other day I had this meditation where my mind didn't wander even once and it felt so blissful. I felt like I was there. I did it. I achieved meditation. It was great. But then the next day my mind was wandering all over the place. How do I stop the second one and just do the first one? How do I be more consistent with that? I tell them, that's the last thing you want. No. The second meditation was far more beneficial to you than the first one, even if it's less comfortable, right? And that's the key, right? And that's part of the judgment, right? The judgment is mind wandering is bad. No, it is not. No, it is not. It's also not good, right? Because when I'm trying to focus on something, I'm trying to do something, when my mind's wandering all over the place, that's not going to be helpful for me, right? So again, it's not one or the other. It's neither and it's both, right? And so when we talk about, when we're practicing mindfulness and meditation, or I should take out that and, when we practice mindfulness meditation formally and informally, what we're really doing is cultivating this understanding that things are not yes or no, good or bad, right or wrong. Things are nuanced. Things are complex. Things are, vast. And that my job is just to understand it, to be curious about it, and to return back to the non-judging awareness anytime I find myself having slipped away from it. And so I hope that makes sense to you, because this is really, again, the absolute key to all of this work. It is this idea that it's not one or the other, and it's also not both, and it's also not neither. And that's the beautiful thing. And so once we can kind of grasp that, and once we can, acknowledge and embrace this reality, well, then we can see all kinds of things this way, right? I mean, I cannot tell you, I don't get triggered even a little bit on Facebook anymore the way I used to. I mean, no way. But again, now that wasn't also something that as soon as I became a skilled meditator, all the Facebook drama disappeared. No way. That is not how it happened. Not even close. There were years where, in fact, I can tell you a story that's not even Facebook. This is really hilarious. I was at this happened during my little hiatus from doing these episodes, and I don't think I ever mentioned this before. It was really, really funny. So I went to a local, there's a chain of health food grocery stores out here, and I went in there. I was really, really hungry, and it was in between, dinner's going to be in 2 hours. And so I don't want to eat something big. And I was on the road, and I'm not I'm a plant-based guy here, and I'm very conscious about what I eat and stuff. So I'm not a drive-through kind of guy, so I was okay, I need to get there's the natural grocers. Let me go in there and get myself a little energy bar. They sell these really delicious brand of energy bar. It's like chocolate, but it's vegan, and it's they got pretzels and peanut butter inside of it. And it's really, really good. And it's $1.15, I think it is, for one of these little bars. So I was bet I'll just go get one of those. I'll be set, and I can do the rest of my errands. Everything will be great. And so I go and I get a couple of these things. I check out. I'm, practicing kindness and just being aware as much as I am aware of, right? And I get the things, and I walk out, and I'm I couldn't even wait to get to the car. I was unwrapping it as I was walking through the parking lot. I took a bite, and this thing was so hard, I thought I cracked a tooth. Okay. I mean, literally, it was like biting into a brick, right? And I was so hungry. I really took a big, I didn't like test it first or anything, and in that moment, I got so upset. I got so sort of, yes, I was responding to this thing that happened, right? Which was scary. I mean, I was like, man, if I crack a tooth, that's a big deal. I don't want that. Right. But it was also, this sort of, this indignant sense that I had, like, who the heck are you to sell me this thing that is of such low quality? You, as a store owner, have a responsibility to me. Okay, this is the story that's going through my mind as I'm marching my way back into this store with this thing half open, and I go right up to the register, and and there's like 4 people online, and I just went right up to her. I was like, "This is hard as a rock. I was gonna crack my tooth," and she was like, "I'm sorry, sir, but you have to wait online." And I just got like, I didn't scream or anything, but I like, okay, fine, and I went over there, and I was standing there, and I was like, I could, like, if I was a cartoon, my face would be like a tomato, and there'd be, steam coming out of my ears, right? And as I'm standing there, and it took like 3 minutes or something like that. As I'm standing there, I realized that I'm wearing a t-shirt that has somebody sitting, in a meditation position, right, with some kind of, chakra kind of artwork or something, and and it says, "Breathe. Your life depends on it." So here I am, just being the most unmindful person in the whole world. And I'm wearing this t-shirt. And in that moment, I started laughing at myself. I really did. And I felt so embarrassed. And so, like, this mother and her daughter, like her, teenage daughter, was in front of me. I mean, I didn't say anything because it was just, but I was in my head, I was just laughing at myself. I was just laughing at the absurdity of it. Right? Now, this is last year. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now, right? And so I could sit here and say, that's bad. That's bad that you're such a mindfulness practitioner and a teacher, for crying out loud. And yet you had this moment of non-mindfulness, right? I could say that's bad. But yet it was a wonderful moment in which I could recognize that, A, there's more work to do, which there's always more work to do. We're always constantly developing. Throughout our whole lives, there's never going to be a moment where it's done. Right? Because life doesn't work that way, right? There's always another layer of the onion. And then the second thing that I can, recognize is that this was an opportunity to do the work in a really beautiful way. This was my opportunity to, oh man, I got to practice here. And therefore, I am more skilled after this than I was before. So what more can I ask for? It's I mean, for lack of a better term, it's improvement. It's progress. I don't like to look at our work this way because we're not really producing something. We're not really trying to achieve something, right? Except being aware. That's it. All right. So I hope this helps. I hope you found this interesting. Yeah, it was kind of an impromptu episode today. Again, I'm, kind of dealing with this non-caffeinated thing and trying to feel into this. And that's another thing where, it feels like, no, you can't do a podcast without a couple of, cups of tea beforehand. You need that energy, Well, here I am doing the podcast with no caffeine at all today. And I thought it was pretty wonderful, actually. Nowhere near what I was afraid of. Like if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, could you do a podcast without drinking tea beforehand? I would say, heck no. No way. Why would you? Well, now I know, right? And that's the beautiful thing. And so every moment of our lives offers us this opportunity. But again, it's not to say that every single moment we have to find that opportunity. We have to be perfect with it because life doesn't happen that way. But as we recognize where we've stumbled, where we recognize where we failed, it's something we can appreciate. We can bring gratitude for it. And that's where life becomes just very playful. All right. Even stress, even when I feel enormous, like that moment in the grocery store was enormous stress in that moment. But yet I was still able to maintain my awareness after a brief departure. I was able to return and to come back into the understanding. And that's all we need to do. That's all we can do. Any of us in our lives. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I know I'm saying this at the very end. Probably nobody's hearing it, but but if you are listening, please go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and see if somebody else you think might enjoy this. All right, because and it's not for my own egoic pleasure. It's because maybe somebody needs to hear this, and maybe something I said today could have changed something for someone and help them to heal and help them to grow. And that's what I'm here to do. All right, everybody. I wish you well. I'll be back again very soon. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.